Every few weeks, a new headline pops up claiming Americans are no longer welcome anywhere. Too loud, too rich, too political, too everything. According to the internet, the world has collectively locked the door, turned off the porch light, and put up a sign that says, "Do not enter, especially you." And yet, people keep moving. Visas are getting approved, homes keep getting bought, retirement checks keep landing in foreign banks like nothing changed. Because here's the part nobody wants to talk about. While politicians posture, locals complain, and social media argues, there are still countries that quietly want Americans to show up. Not because they love American culture or cable news options, but because they need workers, retirees, taxpayers, and people with predictable incomes that don't vanish when the economy sneezes. So today we're looking at 10 countries that, despite the headlines, protests, policy changes, and internet outrage, are still very much open to Americans moving in. Some reluctantly, some enthusiastically, and some while pretending they aren't. If you've been wondering the best countries to move to when you leave the United States, this video is for you. This isn't a travel brochure, it's not an escape fantasy. It's the uncomfortable middle ground between Americans aren't welcome anywhere and everyone wants us. And it's way more interesting than either extreme. Let's take a look. Number 10, Japan. This one surprises people. Japan is cautious, structured, and allergic to chaos, but the population decline is no longer theoretical. Rural towns are disappearing. Labor shortages are real. While Japan isn't throwing open the gate, it's quietly expanding paths for foreign residents, workers, and retirees who can follow the rules and mind their own business. Americans included. If they behave. Japan is a great country to live in. It's actually always on the top 10 best countries to live in lists. Every time I do one, every time anyone does one, Japan is somewhere on there. Even though China's urged their citizens to avoid visiting Japan over the Prime Minister's Taiwan remarks, apparently. We all know what's going on with Taiwan and China. They're about to go to war. Well, they almost have been for like 20 years, but it's getting closer all the time. And Japan and the United States are backing Taiwan. So this has kind of gotten in the craw of China. In case you don't know, one of our employees, Suki, lives in Japan part-time. She's from Japan. She's in Osaka now, and while I was researching this video, I thought I'd ask her, how do Japanese people see Americans right now? She said they really don't dislike Americans, they see what's going on. And she said it's more of a sympathy feeling for the American people, not anger or anything like that. She said they usually don't hold politics against the people of a country, which in my opinion, I think that's the way it should be. I mean, very rarely do the people get on board with everything the government is doing, whether it's us or another country. So if you've got a skill or you're retired and you could pass the background check and meet all the requirements, Japan is more than willing to accept you in. Number 9, Colombia. Colombia's reputation still lags reality, which works out great for newcomers. Cities like Medellin and parts of Bogota continue attracting Americans with low costs and improving infrastructure. The government keeps refining visas instead of shutting them down. They want skilled workers, entrepreneurs, and retirees who don't panic every time the news cycle gets weird. More and more Americans every single year realize that the days of Pablo Escobar are long gone. I mean, that all ended in the early 90s and late 80s. They still have some gangs, they still have some cartels, but nothing like they once did. Cities like Medellin and Bogota once were the wild, wild west in a jungle. That is their history, and they accept it, and they just want everyone to know that that is their history. It's not going on really anymore. At one point, they were one of the most dangerous countries in the world. In recent years, they kind of ended this long-going thing with a rebel group called FARC. That's all well and good, but they do have other armed groups, including drug traffickers, that are still active throughout the country. Petty crime is common in historic city centers. Incidents of violent crime and kidnapping for ransom are widespread through the country, but that's just like any other country. It's not crazy like it used to be. So Americans have realized this, and they're heading down there, and Colombia doesn't care what we're doing here. They like Americans because, like most places, American retirees have guaranteed checks that go into their economy and they get taxes on. So Colombia is wide open. Head on down. Number 8, Greece. Greece went through an economic collapse, austerity, recovery, and now is back saying, if you've got income, we're open for business. Low cost of living outside of tourist zones, residency programs tied to property or income, and governments that understand demographics very well. What more could American want? Greece wants people who can afford to be bored on Tuesday afternoon and pay taxes doing it. Since their economic collapse, they've been doing a lot better, and they are more than willing, no matter what's going on in the United States, to let you in to be a citizen. You got to go through all the steps and you got to get your visa and all that stuff. I don't know about the citizenship part. That's a hell of a lot more complicated, but getting a visa and retiring there, it's getting easier all the time. And it's one of the top destinations to go on vacation, so it's almost like living right next to a vacation spot. Sure, like I said earlier, you can't really retire on a budget in a tourist town, so just keep that in mind. But you can still be close. Number 7, Thailand. Thailand has tightened its rules, relaxed its rules, tightened them again, then they just waved everyone back in. Long stay visas, retirement visas, and elite visas with price tags that scream target demographic are all on the table. Despite political shifts and global uncertainty, Thailand knows exactly who keeps the lights on in certain regions: Americans. And they remain welcome as long as they don't expect consistency. Americans don't move to Thailand, they exhale into it. They arrive carrying spreadsheets, cholesterol numbers, and a low-grade fear of winter. Somewhere between the jet bridge and the first bowl of noodles, the shoulders drop and time loosens its grip. Thailand doesn't ask what you did for a living or why your knees sound like popcorn. It just hands you a cold drink, a plastic chair, and the radical idea that tomorrow can wait. Back home, retirement is a negotiation with insurance companies and lawn equipment. In Thailand, it's a small daily ritual. Coffee that costs less than a parking meter, a meal that tastes like someone actually cared, sunsets that don't quite require a filter or a homeowners association. Math suddenly works. Social Security stretches like it's been doing yoga. The fear of outliving your savings shrinks to the size of a minor inconvenience, like forgetting sunscreen. Thailand doesn't rush you through dinner or shame you for sitting too long. It understands that life is not a productivity contest. It's more of a long lunch with no bill coming. So Americans escape, and more often than not, they don't like to come back. Number 6, Panama. Panama doesn't even pretend. They actively market to Americans like a late-night infomercial. Visa perks, dollar-sized economy, territorial tax systems. They want retirees, they want expats, they want any foreigner with money that'll get into their economy and start circulating. If you can handle the humidity and aggressive paperwork stamps, Panama is still very much open for business. I lived there for a while. I loved it. I'd probably retire there if I was single. Americans don't retire to Panama with a plan. They show up with a hunch. Usually it starts after a conversation with a tax bill or property insurance renewal that feels vaguely personal. Someone says Panama out loud and it sounds manageable. Close enough to the United States, far enough away from the nonsense. And before they know it, they're standing in line at an immigration center thinking, this already feels easier. Panama has a way of lowering the volume, not silence, just less noise. The kind where nobody is in a hurry to upsell you on everything in life. The dollar works, healthcare makes sense, lunch costs what lunch should cost, not what a marketing department decided it's worth. You stop doing mental math every time you leave the house, and that alone feels like a minor miracle. Retirement in Panama isn't like pretending you're on vacation forever. It's about normal days that don't feel like a scam. Morning walks without ice, afternoons where the biggest decision is shade or sun. Bureaucracy exists, don't get me wrong, but it's oddly human. So Americans stay, not because Panama is perfect, it isn't, but because for the first time in a long time, life feels affordable and oddly fair. And that's a hard thing to walk away from. Panama is welcoming, and they'd be happy to have you. Still, with all the stuff going on in the United States. Number 5, Costa Rica. Costa Rica has built an entire economic wing around Americans who don't want winter, chaos, and complicated healthcare bills. The government keeps expanding residency options because retirees and remote workers spend money and they don't demand factories. Yes, prices have risen. Yes, locals complain. No, Costa Rica is not closing the door. They're just charging admission now. And it's still way cheaper than the United States. Costa Rica's no secret. People have been moving there for years. I have a relative that goes down there for surfing trips all the time, and he often thinks about retiring in Costa Rica. Costa Rica is one of the more stable countries in Central America. It's more affordable than the United States, and it's got beautiful beaches and jungle. They seem to stay out of the politics, so what's going on here in the United States doesn't really come into play in a place like Costa Rica. So they're more than willing to accept Americans no matter what's going on. Number 4, Spain. Spain acts like it's fed up with digital nomads while simultaneously issuing visas designed specifically for them. The math isn't subtle. Low birth rates, youth unemployment, retirees with guaranteed income look very attractive when that's your situation. As long as you don't try and turn every cafe into a co-working space, Spain is still very open for American arrivals. Retired, digital nomads, whatever. Now, Spaniards, in a way, are fascinated by a few things when it comes to the United States. Fast food is one of the first things that'll come up because they're fascinated with our need to go there a couple times a week or more. The Spanish like quality food, not just the high-end people, not the rich people, everyone. So they just kind of look at how Americans are with fast food in disbelief, and they'll ask you questions about it. The other one is peanut butter for some reason. They're kind of fascinated with that too. Now, when it comes to politics, the average Spaniard does follow world politics, which includes the United States. And they follow all the negative news that goes on in the United States, because as we know, news worldwide, they don't just tell you the good stuff. Matter of fact, they hardly ever tell you the good stuff. So only the bad stuff gets out to places like Spain, at least en masse. But Spain is a country like Japan and a few others that they don't blame the American people for anything that goes on in politics. They are a very welcoming country, especially when it comes to retirees and the financial benefits they get by having American retirees or retirees from any country. If you've got a pension coming in, most countries, especially ones with low birth rates, they're more than willing to have you there. Now, unless our country's had a direct issue with a country, you're not going to get much grief as a retiree. People will ask you questions. Spain's one of them. They're not going to chase you out of town with torches and pitchforks. Number 3, Italy. Italy isn't trying to steal Americans. It's trying to refill chairs. Whole towns are sitting there like beautiful, slightly offended grandparents wondering where everyone went. Schools are half full, shutters closed, cafes open late because there's nobody left to argue about espresso. Italy doesn't need more influencers or tourists. It needs people. People who pay taxes, renovate old houses, keep the lights on, and maybe complain a little. Italians understand that part. They actually enjoy it. Americans make sense for Italy. They show up with savings, pensions, remote jobs, and a suspicious amount of enthusiasm for fixing crumbling stone homes. They buy the €1 house, then immediately spend real money making it livable. They keep small towns alive without trying to turn them into theme parks. Italy loves that. It's economic stimulus with human faces and Costco memberships. Americans tend to respect the food, the pace, and the rules about not cappuccinoing past breakfast. They enroll in language classes, they sit too long at lunch, they age loudly and unapologetically, which Italy secretly admires. In return, Italy offers healthcare that doesn't feel like a prank, walkable cities, and a daily reminder that life isn't supposed to be rushed like a checkout line. So Italy opens the doors. Long stay visas, tax incentives, small town mayors practically waving from balconies. Not because Italy is desperate, but because it's practical. Empty towns don't age well, neither do people. And sometimes the best way to preserve a country is to invite outsiders who are ready to stay, spend, and finally slow down. Do they care about what's going on in the United States? And do they hold it against the American people? They don't hold it against us. They see it, they understand it, but they're not watching 24-hour news channels like we do here in the United States. So they don't spend their time getting worked up by one political party or the other. So it's there for you. Number 2, Mexico. Mexico isn't courting Americans with grand speeches or glossy slogans. It's doing it the quiet way, being there, For decades, Americans have already been slipping across the border with a suitcase and a vague idea that life could cost less and feel better. Mexico noticed. Towns that were empty on weekends now have bakeries that are open early again, rentals stay occupied, doctors stay in town. The economy doesn't just grow, it circulates. Americans bring in steady money, long stays, and a tendency to fix roofs instead of flipping houses overnight. From Mexico's point of view, that's not a problem. It's stability. There's also geography doing a lot of the selling. Same time zone, short flights, easy visits back home when grandkids or guilt calls. Americans don't have to cut the cord. They just loosen it a little bit. Mexico understands that kind of relationship. It's familiar, stay a while, leave, come back, nobody keeps score. One of the real reasons Mexico keeps the door open is simpler. Americans adapt. They learn the rhythm. They shop local, they sit in plazas, they become part of the daily scenery instead of trying to redesign it. In return, Mexico offers something rare: affordable healthcare, livable cities, and a sense that life isn't constantly charging interest on itself. So you will find a lot of people in Mexico that might have a problem with you, but the reality is most people in Mexico don't follow the news. They don't care what the United States is doing unless it directly affected a relative. You also have to consider there is some crime in some areas that you need to avoid. Study up on that before you decide on a place in Mexico, because they do have states in this country that they're a little rough, but other parts are perfectly fine. All right, before we get to number 1, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, I would really appreciate it if you did. Also, give the video a big thumbs up. That helps out a lot. Leave me a comment. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Portugal. Portugal, for the last handful of years, have been one of the best countries for Americans to move to. Really, Westerners. It always seems to show up at the top of lists like this, mine and other people's as well. Even though they try and act like they're tired of Americans, they're still got the door wide open. Yes, they tweak the golden visa, and yes, locals complain about housing, but retirees and remote workers are still welcome as long as they bring a steady income and don't ask why everyone speaks better English than you. Healthcare works, crime is low, bureaucracy moves at the speed of a sleepy cat. They still want Americans, just quieter ones. I was reading an article about people that have moved to Portugal, and one person said no matter where you go in Portugal, there's a sense of calm. Now, when you hear the word calm and you're thinking about retirement, you know those two go hand in hand. Now, getting a visa isn't as easy as it once was. In 2024, they phased out the golden visa through real estate investment. Now, if you've got the money and you invest in other things, you could still qualify. The country's D7 retirement visa is still an option, but requires proof of sufficient passive income, about $980 a month at least. They want to make sure you have a place to stay, and they have minimum stay requirements. You'll also have to pass a criminal background check and have proof of health care coverage. So even though it's popular and a lot of people want to live there, it's not a walk in the park, but they don't hate Americans. In that same article about the person that moved there, they were talking to a guy from Portugal who owned a diner. He said they follow all news, American and world news, but they don't take it to heart, which for Americans, that's a good thing. Now, here's my final thoughts. None of these countries want Americans because they love American politics, social media, or opinions. They want stability, income, taxes, labor, consumption without disruption. And if you can provide that and keep your expectations reasonable, plenty of places are still saying yes, even when the headlines say complicated. All right, everyone, have a great day. Be nice to each other.